Welcome to the online course on practical tips regarding the organization of a virtual hackathon. In this lesson, we will share some practical tips and insights into the organization of hackathons with a special focus on using the hackathon format as a challenge-based learning exercise in education. As with many assignments, designing a successful hackathon starts with the subject definition and question formulation that the participants will be working on. So, if possible, choose a subject that is relatable to the experiences of the expected participants. Having participants work on subjects that are relevant to them increases their motivation to participate in the actual hackathon. Another tip is to consider testing your subject or question with a relevant focus group in order to see whether the question is clear enough to the participants. This is because defining a suitable question is often not achieved in a single session and requires time and sometimes fine-tuning. Finally, it's important to have in mind that the question has to have the right balance between feasibility and difficulty. It has to therefore be confined, it has to be concrete, but at the same time, the solution to your question should not be obvious. Hackathons, like all events, take preparation. Especially if you're organizing a hackathon for the first time, it is wise to script out the event as completely as possible. This script or roadmap is meant to give guidance to the participants throughout the activity, and you should therefore include the names, the organizations, and the contact details of all relevant stakeholders and experts. It should also include a planning for every day that the hackathon takes place, including when you expect certain aspects of the assignment to be completed. It should also include the problem statement and question, together with some information on the methodologies that you will be using, for example, the pentagonal problem or ideation techniques. The roadmap provided by the Virtual Hackathon project is a way to provide this script and accompanying information. We will now focus primarily on hackathons as educational tools. So one of the first things to take into consideration is that the primary outcome of this should be the learning outcomes for the students. And solving the problem provided by the eventual stakeholders should be treated as an additional bonus. Now, a second thing to take into consideration is that it's useful to know your students in advance. If possible, collect the study year, the background, and the experience with the hackathons that the participants have. This will help you provide as an accurate as possible script to cater to their learning experience. Furthermore, it's interesting to know the motivation for joining the hackathon, and we will get into this in a bit more detail later on in the presentation. Hackathons are a group assignment, and it's therefore important to consider the group dynamics of your teams. Firstly, it's important to consider whether you want participants to be able to sign up either as a team or as individuals. Signing up as a team increases the chance that the group will actually be capable of cooperating better and thus successfully work throughout the assignment. However, it's possible that you will end up with groups that have similar backgrounds, and a successful hackathon team is often built out of people that have mixed backgrounds. Now, asking participants to sign up individually and then forming the group teams yourself ensures that the teams will have mixed backgrounds, and learning to work with new group is a valuable skill for anyone to learn. However, groups may end up stuck due to an incapability of working together effectively. Now, in either case, it's wise to include team building exercises in your schedule so that the group will get acquainted with each other, but also to demonstrate the importance of clear communication, clear role distributions, and overall good group dynamics. So, what are some good and useful team building exercises for you to use in your hackathon? Now, of course, there is a myriad of different options, but a few examples that we have used in our pilot hackathons include, for example, the communications game, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, or you could ask your groups to come up with a team name together, or their logo and their mascot, or you can even play a game where each person has to say two truths about themselves and one lie. This is called the 2 truths and 1 lie game. As mentioned previously, motivation can be an important factor for the success of your hackathon. Hackathons are by design an intense experience, and ensuring that there is enough motivation for your participants throughout the activity can be challenging, especially if your participants did not enroll by choice, but rather as a mandatory part of a course, or if the students get stuck on a particular assignment or part of the problem. Now, you can aid in this by building in specific times for feedback in the schedule, where participants present their progress and are helped either by the present staff or teachers, or even through external experts. Also, sometimes it helps to add deadlines in a schedule so that the participants have no choice but to move on from a particular task. Now, if you use hackathons as an educational tool, it's important to consider whether the students are to be graded for their efforts. If so, make sure that the grading criteria are clear up front and couple these grading criteria to relevant learning outcomes. Since, as mentioned earlier, the learning outcomes are more important than the actual final outcome or solution, then this should be reflected in the grading. If you include an external jury to grade the outcomes, then definitely make sure that this jury is duly instructed on the learning outcomes of the hackathon as well. Hackathons are a great way to learn a number of valuable skills that are useful in most professional career paths. However, especially for inexperienced participants, it's important to provide training for these skills throughout the hackathon. You can do this by providing information on the skills in the roadmap, or by providing workshops given by the teachers or staff, or provide workshops provided by external experts. A few examples of skills trainings that can be useful to provide during the workshop include various ideation techniques to brainstorm possible solutions to the problem at hand, or on performing problem analysis and stakeholder analysis. Also, you could provide leadership and communication workshops. This is to improve group dynamics, or also workshops on pitch training. The organizers can choose whether the workshops are provided to the entire team simultaneously, or whether these workshops can be followed only by representatives of the team, which will then have to apply them to their teams. Now, these workshops can be mandatory or optional, depending on how important the skills are to the learning process, whether there are an explicit learning outcome or not, or how much variation there is within the backgrounds of your participants. Opting to let representatives follow the workshops allows for a larger amount of workshops to be provided, but if you decide to allow the entire team to join, then the skills that are taught are provided to a larger number of participants. The choice is yours. We hope that the practical tips provided in this lesson are useful to you, and good luck with your hackathons.